Today was a tough episode. Tough to plan out, tough to record, and frankly, tough to have even made the decision to cover this topic. But I feel like if a discussion around such a sensitive topic helps even one person, then it should be done, no matter how uncomfortable it makes me or anybody else. 1 week ago from the date of this recording, on Friday, May 24th, Grayson Murray was playing at the Charles Schwab Challenge. Edging towards the weekend with just a few holes to go, he, I believe, carded 3 bogeys in a row and packed it in. He told his playing partners that he wasn't feeling well, that he was ill, and he withdrew from the event. The following morning, it was discovered that Grayson Murray was dead. PGA Commissioner Jay Monahan talked to Grayson's family, and the Murray family said that Grayson would have wanted the event to continue. And after that, a statement was issued on behalf of Eric and Terry Murray, Grayson's parents. They said, "We have spent the last 24 hours trying to come to terms with the fact that our son is gone. It's surreal that we not only have to admit it to ourselves, but that we also have to acknowledge it to the world. It's a nightmare. We have so many questions that have no answers, but one. Was Grayson loved? The answer is yes. By us, his brother Cameron, his sister Erica, all of his extended family, by his friends, by his fellow players, and, it seems, by many of you who are reading this. He was loved and he will be missed. We would like to thank the PGA Tour and the entire world of golf for the outpouring of support. Life wasn't always easy for Grayson, and although he took his own life, we know he rests peacefully now. Please respect our privacy as we work through this incredible tragedy. Please honor Grayson by being kind to one another. If that becomes his legacy, we could ask for nothing else." What is up, guys? Welcome back to Fondling Cardboard. I'm your host, Mike Lakusta, aka the Golf Card Collector. I personally didn't know Grayson very well. Obviously, I didn't know him personally, but even as a golf fan, I wasn't following Grayson's career. But after this tragedy and hearing about his story on the Golf Channel coverage and on social media, I took to YouTube to watch some of Grayson's past interviews and get a feel for him. And he seemed like somebody that he was really struggling. Something was in his mind that wasn't being treated and that he wasn't able to shake, clearly. And it puts into perspective that no matter how successful somebody is or appears to be, whether they're homeless or a 2-time winner on the PGA Tour, people wrestle with demons. And the comments on those YouTube videos is what really got me, because it showed this overwhelming combination of outpouring of love and sadness. And through all of that, it was actually an interview with Peter Malnati, who had been playing and paired with Grayson for the last 2 days, and he just displayed such heartbreak and devastation after spending those final days with Grayson. It's just so heartbreaking to see everybody go through this. Today on the podcast, we have a repeat guest of the show, and my friend, James Peacock. We are going to be covering some of Grayson's story before shifting into a broader conversation about mental health in professional sports, as well as our own lives. And ultimately, this is a podcast about trading cards, so we will respectfully shift into a conversation about the ethical implications of buying, selling, and flipping cards surrounding situations like this. death, and tragedy. And we finish off by covering Grayson's catalog of cards in an effort to curate his lineage and legacy in the trading card hobby. James, obviously, we experienced a tragedy in the golf world and in the hobby last weekend with Grayson Murray passing away and taking his own life. Um, when you found out about his passing, you you and I were messaging, and you said your heart goes out to him and his family, and you seemed very empathetic, and I really respect that. Um, like what was your immediate reaction, and how did it impact you personally?
Yeah. Yeah, my gut reaction first was just sort of like, I think the first emotion I always feel is a little bit of denial slash skepticism. I'm like, what happened? I tend to not want to believe it right away when I hear it, especially when a lot of the details weren't out yet. So I think a little bit of shock and denial at first, and then immediately just got really, really bummed, really, really heartbroken. Um, the last time it kind of reminded me that I felt this way was when Robin Williams died. Obviously, that was a lot more significant, but it reminds me of all of the same emotions because, it's something that I don't think we talk about enough, but it's also a lot harder for me when I see someone that I think like I look up to in terms of quote unquote a successful life or doing something that would be a dream, and saying that that isn't even enough to help with some of those demons. I think that was the thing that's like the one-two punch for me is sort of that combination.
You reminded me that he had actually won recently. Like this is a
Yeah.
guy who's not necessarily a superstar, but has been at the top of the golfing world for the like basically, right? He's not on the Mount Everest, but to be a PGA Tour winner means you've experienced incredible success, and he's done it twice. He won in his rookie season, which was a long time ago, 2017 or something like that. And I recall in one of his interviews, he said that's the worst thing that could have happened in his career because it set his expectations too high. And, he proceeded to have like 6 years of ups and downs professionally. And this January, he won in Hawaii.
Yes.
So it's like, you look at this guy's life and his career and you think, wow, like he bounced back, and he had been sober for I think 8 months, something like that. He was struggling with addiction. And I would have thought that you could he could win, and that would almost be like uplifting, like it would make him feel like he's on the right track, but obviously that wasn't the case. Um, when I first, like I told you, your reaction was, he must have been suffering badly. He just had some recent success, and it's shocking when someone's so successful is struggling mentally. So I guess just generally speaking, what kind of discussion does this tragedy spark just about the importance of mental health awareness in professional sports or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just sparks the idea that we need to understand that people that deal with this, like Grayson, like myself, like a lot of other people, that this really is like an actual illness, right? I think we kind of still treat it as its own category when I think we should actually treat it like an actual true like terminal illness. If someone's vocally said they're struggling with mental demons and they don't want to get up in the morning and they don't want to, nothing excites them. They don't really have enjoyment with a lot of things they used to have enjoyment with. Like those are really big red flags. Like I think that should be treated as like a true like diagnosis, and everyone should be doing everything they can in their life to help with that and make their life easier and reach out and give that support versus I think sometimes it's easier just to take a step back and like let someone try to figure out on their own because not everyone has the answer. So not trying to say everyone needs to like circle around a person like that and try to problem solve everything, but just actually be there for them, reach out to them a lot, show that care and support, offer to like maybe cook them some food or take them out to dinner or is there anything I can do around the house? Like anything, like 'cause every little thing is overwhelming when you're at that state. And I think we don't treat it enough like a true illness,
Mm.
like a true like terminal illness. That's how I think of it.
Yeah,
So
and the first thing that comes to my mind is even if you accept it about yourself, and you put yourself out there by telling others. Being an illness, that doesn't just fix it. You still have to have the supports in place, and you still have to have strategies and a process to pull yourself out of that hole because, a simple acknowledgement doesn't cure the illness. Um, and
No.
I'm saying I actually applaud you for, identifying yourself as someone who's struggled mentally. I have someone very close to me as well who has, and they prefer not to be as, vocal about it or outside of their very close inner circle. And I think if you can talk more about it, it allows you to find those resources. If people know about something in your area or have suggestions, then, hopefully others can help. Um, what, what else can someone do who's going into a dark place? Like, you just gave some suggestions for someone who's hearing about someone, hey, your friend is struggling. You can take them out. You can have more talks with them. But what about that friend, that person who's in the hole? Like, what should they do?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think this is what these kind of events do is spark these kind of conversations. And I think it's okay for even someone like myself to admit there is no easy answer. I feel like if there was an answer, this wouldn't be such an issue. So even just speaking first person, um, it's a constant sort of evolution of ups and downs and different chapters of when you feel certain ways and then certain life events. Like I'm expecting, my first child, and that's really shifted my priorities and my thinking and how I think about everything. Um, so the things that have helped me is just like really identify things that genuinely make you present and make you happy. And it sounds obvious, but do more of that and try to strip away the stuff that does the opposite. So, but like put it on paper, talk it out with the people close with you, and truly try to identify those moments where you are present and enjoying life and thinking that, wow, this is worth it, and double down on it. I remember reading something about Grayson that's saying that he hated his life on the PGA Tour, just like the travel, the hotel being alone, the ups and downs of just playing well. Like he just did not like that existence. So like with that sort of logic in mind, it's like, yes, it's like he probably needed it for a source of income, but at a certain point, when do you start to look other places and when do you start to fill your time up with things that you don't hate, right? So I think being true to yourself about what actually makes you feel present and fulfilled and try to do more of that. It sounds obvious, but I think it's hard sometimes to implement. Um, so really just
Mhm.
being true to yourself and doing that, I think is big. And then yeah, just talking with other people, talking with professionals helps. And I think talking with other people that are experiencing the same thing, because I will say from my point of view, it's like it's almost impossible to chat with someone that doesn't have some relatability with the topic, just because it like there's they can't really relate as much as they think they can. So I think it's
Mhm.
also important to try to surround yourself with people that are struggling with the same thing. I think those two things are like really important.
Yeah, I know a lot of our audience is not going to be women. I'm sure there's some ladies out there, but the first analogy that came to my mind was, when my wife was going through postpartum. A lot of women go through postpartum anxiety and depression, for instance. And
Sure.
when they can connect with each other, they can help lift each other up, talk through some of those struggles. And, just because, we're men and we're supposed to be manly doesn't mean we can't have those same supports, those same friendships. And as you said, professionals, counseling, psychotherapy, honestly, even medication and all sorts of options that I feel like are stigmatized, but they shouldn't be. And it's okay to explore every option, especially if anybody out there who's listening to this is going through anything remotely close to what Grayson was going through, make sure you find help because we don't need more examples of this, even though we know that they will happen. It's just tragic for the entire world, the communities that they're a part of, their families. So my heart goes out to them. Um,
Same.
and this is going to be impossible to pivot this conversation in an appropriate way to trading cards because ultimately that's what this podcast is about. And I want to make sure that listeners aren't just listening to, a couple friends talking about a tragedy, that it still is in the context of the format of the show and the meaning of the show. And
Yep.
so there are a few different topics that came to my mind.
Okay.
So again, I just want to make sure people are aware, I'm not taking this lightly. I'm not just trying to have a jolly old time talking about sports cards after such a serious subject. Maybe we can carry the tone through and learn lessons from all of this. But when it comes to cards, there's a trend I'm noticing, and I mentioned this earlier, and you said you weren't as familiar with it, and so maybe it's more from other sports. But when I look at basketball, football, hockey, baseball, there's this trend that when a player passes away, that their card prices have a spike. In a similar way to other events that cause things like if they have a big on-court performance, if they're inducted into the Hall of Fame or announced, big kind of milestones in a professional's life that affect the market. And in that note, I wanted to know, is Grayson Murray's market affected in the same way? And sure enough, it was, because his cards, he was not a superstar per se. And um, with all due respect to him and his family, he also had a little bit of a personality that was abrasive, and people, um, let's say he was not a fan favorite, and a lot of it, I'm sure, had to do with his mental struggles. I'm sure had to do with his addiction, and his having a hard time to control his emotions and his regulation of his behavior. And as a result of that, I don't know how many Grayson collectors were out there, even though he did have some good success. And so his cards were selling, I don't have any examples to show, but let's say, just a few dollars, for rookie cards, rookie autographs, those sorts of things. And when I checked eBay to see what kind of data was out there, suddenly the cards that were listed are now 10 times the price. And so,
Interesting.
so those sellers are, you could say taking advantage of the situation. You could say that they are adjusting to the market. And in addition to that, there's also new listings, right? And so those people are just listing at whatever the market price is, or listing an auction starting at 99 cents or whatever. So I guess what are your thoughts on how our sports card hobby market reacts to deaths and
Yeah.
tragedies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, my gut reaction to that is a little bit icky. Like I know like the ethical sort of side of it. I don't like just right out of the gate, my thought just goes into I don't like it, but I want to dissect it a little more and see if there's any like positives of that or not. So I don't like it in the sense that, yeah, if a lot of people had these cards sitting around now, they just want to get rid of them just because there's a high markup. Like that's something, that kind of just goes back with the whole investing versus collecting mindset in general. Like I don't, a lot of the cards I own right now, just because they went up in value, I wouldn't just list them on eBay. So I think that is just investing versus collecting 101. So I think those people that are doing that are probably going to do that regardless of why it's up. And I think this is, like you said, just one of those events that spike it. So that's probably just in the nature of the beast. I think where it gets a little bit rough or unethical is if as soon as the news broke, someone went on COMC and bought out like all of them and then started like doing that as like, oh, here's my way to make like a couple $100 or a couple $1,000. I think that is where it gets into just really icky territory. Like you'd have to be really hard up for money to do something like that, I would think. So that's the part where I don't like. But on the flip side, I will say in terms of like the value of the card itself, maybe some of that was organic, right? Maybe some people actually started to like Grayson now that they found out about him more and more of his story and was like, wow, I want to honor him and own one of his autographs and actually own it as part of my collection. And if it is 30, 50, $60 now, I don't care because now I'm a fan. So if that's happening, I'm completely cool with that. And I'm okay with that. And it is just sort of by, supply and demand at that point. So I think that's where I stand on it, where it's like if you're a seller and you just want to sell it and you don't want it and you're selling it to someone that really wants it, that's completely fine. I would just the few people that maybe, try to buy a bunch and flip and make a quick buck, I would, maybe just have a heart to heart with yourself and maybe try to find some other ways to make money. But that's just kind of my quick thoughts on it.
you'd have like I hope that it's not happening, but you speculated that somebody might buy up all the cards that are listed at low prices and then try to flip them themselves. And maybe that is happening. And I really hope those that I'm friends with and interact with who are more on the investing side of the hobby that they're not trying to do that. I agree with you. It gives me an icky feeling. And just to look at some data. I just pulled up his sold listings on eBay and I was just looking at two examples. Actually it's a card that you own, which is card of the week. It's the 2021 SP Authentic Rookie Signatures Tier 1 Grayson Murray autograph on card autograph. It's a very nice card. Serial numbered out of 799. In other sports, you might call that like his main rookie card, or his main rookie
Sure.
autograph card, and that uh, was on various eBay listings. I like using COMC, which stands for Check Out My Cards. I like using them as an example because they have the card listed in a drop-down menu, and you can see how the quantity of them that are listed for sale, and it'll show you if they were recently sold. And so that for that card in particular, there were five of them for sale. There were seven of them for sale. Two of them appear to be sold in the past for $2, $3. And it looks like on May 25th, all five of them sold instantly.
Mm,
And
there
so
you go.
it makes you wonder, were collectors out there wanting something to remember him, to have a piece of Grayson Murray's legacy as part of their collection, or is it people who think, over the next week I'll be able to flip this for a profit? So
Well, I guess my question to you is how many are listed right now?
great
Because if it's five,
question.
that would tell you right there.
I actually can find that. I hadn't even. There you
Because my
go.
gut would say it's probably a mixed bag. Like I would assume a couple are just like, man, I gotta have that card, and then a couple are like, all right, I probably bought a multiple. But what? So what did you find?
You're exactly right. I said five of them sold instantly, and two of them were instantly relisted. So two of the five people chose to take advantage of the
Okay.
situation.
All right.
And
So yeah, it's probably a mixed bag. Yeah.
I actually it makes my stomach churn looking at this because they were sold instantly on Saturday for $2 and $3.50, and they're relisted at $57.70. And it appears to be the same seller because they listed them both at the exact same price.
Sure. Okay. So that's a
So
good example. Yeah.
yeah, 20x. Um, it looks like at least one person out there did it, and that, I guess everybody has the right to do what they want. You and I can sit
Yeah,
here
it's
and
a free
say
market. Yeah.
we can say it feels icky. Maybe next time I talk to my friend Paul Hickey, the sports card strategy host, I'll ask his take on this. Maybe you and I are a couple of softies, but considering the circumstances, it's a young guy. So great. Grayson Murray was 30 years old, had a fiance, was engaged to be married. Someone, similar, maybe a bit younger than us, but very similar kind of stage in life. And it just breaks your heart versus maybe this being a common thing for an 80-year-old retired athlete who's lived a full life and passes away of old age with his family around him. Do you know what I mean? Like in that situation, your heart isn't pulled as much. You just think, wow, I respect his legacy and I admire um, the life that he lived. And there isn't that sadness necessarily. There's sadness for people who really were fans, but buying and selling their cards just doesn't seem as taboo. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's interesting because, like you said, no matter what, like these events are going to happen. So, like if we're even thinking of like Jack Nicklaus, right? Like, there's probably we could probably it's probably a safe bet that around the time he passes, there might be a little bit of spike in popularity in his cards, and then it'll fizzle out. So, if you were sign of an investor slash flipper, you could kind of start stockpiling and preparing, and like that to me is like more strategic, more just par for the course. But like you said, I think the cause of the death is important. I do think that is important, especially like the thing that comes to mind when I think about this. And again, I don't collect other sports, so I can't speak with it firsthand. But I know this was happening when Kobe passed away. So, and I know some of that topic got brought up in terms of like all the listings that flooded eBay, and even like my wife's dad, he owns a sports store, and he was like, "Oh, where's all my Kobe stuff? Got to get rid of it." So it's just like I know that happens, but I do think the cause of death does matter because to me, it just it does fall closer on the icky side versus just the economics, supply and demand, interest side of things. So I think it's
Mm.
important. I think it makes a big difference in terms of my ability to sleep at night, knowing what I'm doing. But again, I think I'm a softie, and I think there's so many worse things going on in the world that I bet you most people don't think that profiting off a card is that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. But I just think it's a licky.
Yeah, I agree. You know, the $20 you can make probably for buying and selling one of Grayson Murray's cards or Kobe's cards, is that gonna help you in any way? Like, does that really change any part of your life versus maybe using your energy and your thought towards maybe something for good? Now, when you mentioned Kobe, I mean, in my eyes, that's the same category as Grayson. I mean, it's not as sad because Grayson clearly this just demonstrates the magnitude of struggle he went through. With Kobe, I think he was living a happy life. He had wonderful daughters, was married, had semi recently retired and was kind of kicking off the rest of his life and died in an
Yeah,
accident. And so tragic, 100%, you know, not in the exact same category, but in terms of, in my eyes, ethics with regards to flipping cards, maybe in a similar category as Grayson Murray because it's tragic. So I'll give you
yeah.
an example of something that I did actually when an athlete had passed away, and let me know what your thoughts are.
Okay.
So I used to collect basketball cards, and it was my main. I still do, but basketball used to be my main sport that I collected. And I had a Bill Russell card from 2008 Topps Chrome, and it was into orange refractor. A nice card, not a super high end card, but a nice card. And it was just sitting in a top loader for most of my life, for about 20, well, not 20 years, 15 years. And one day I just threw it into a grading submission because I thought, you know what? It's a nice card, and someday I'll probably trade it or sell it. And so might as well get it graded. And it got a gem mint with SGC. So when Bill Russell passed away, and I heard the news from the Sports Card Nonsense podcast, Mike Geo is a big Boston Celtics fan, and they did a little tribute and they talked a bit about his history, and the subject of buying and flipping Bill Russell cards came up. They had a similar conversation to what we're having. You know, some people could be very sensitive to it, some people have zero emotion towards it, and everything in between. That conversation made me think, oh, I have that Bill Russell card and I have been meaning to get rid of it. Like it honestly has no place in my personal collection. So I suppose, and I didn't think about it at the time. I didn't instantly run and grab it and put it on eBay. It probably took me a week before I got around to actually pulling it and listing it with some other cards that I was selling. But this conversation with you has kind of sparked me to think, should I have even felt that dilemma? Should I have said, am I taking advantage of this? Or out of respect for Bill Russell's legacy and his life and him as a person, because he passed away like that, should I not even touch that card for another 6 months out of respect?
Sure. How did you pass away?
I'll do some quick Googling, but let's just assume that he passed away of pretty natural causes.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really good example because as you're saying it and as you're telling that story, I would hate to be the kind of person that says to anyone like, no, that is something you shouldn't do, and no, that's not right. Again, I think that falls into that category of you had already planned on probably letting go of it. You had hold on to it for a long time. You got your enjoyment out of it. And if this was just the best point in time to exit on that card, um, I understand that logic. Like, it totally makes sense. I think that's okay. I think I just am so far on the collector side. And again, that I'm trying to sell more stuff, but I think if I already knew a certain portion of my collection was going to go out the door, of course you're going to start with the ones that are worth the most or the most relevant at that time. So I think it's more logical than being sort of ill intention. Again, I think if you did what we said, where all of a sudden your collection grew overnight because you found all these good deals and you're trying to flip it, I think maybe that is where, to me, it starts to get a little bit worse. But if it's just something you were holding on for a long time and now is the time to let it go, I mean, that's completely fair, I think.
Hmm. Hmm. Just to circle back, so he passed away at the age of 88. So he
Wow,
was quite
long life.
elderly,
Yeah.
with his wife at his side, and no cause of death was available. So whether or not he was battling any kind of illness or not, it wasn't public. And with a man of that stature, and I mean physical stature, he was like 6'10" or something like that. Their organs tend to work a lot harder throughout their life. So honestly, 88 years old is a pretty impressive lifespan for someone of his build. And when I say that, I don't belittle his passing away. For his family, for him, and for his fans. Like it's a sad, sad day. Um, I wasn't a Bill Russell fan. Maybe the card, you might say I could think it's a special card because I pulled it myself, but I didn't even really view it as, a high-end card. I didn't view it as something that had a spot in my collection. I probably may have had more ethical considerations if it's something that I had like actually purchased as a single, like I bought it off of eBay saying, I kind of like this card. We'll see what happens with it. And it kind of had a spot within one of my lanes. But I guess the direction I'm heading is that people may have that same feeling about Grayson Murray, and so if they had these cards and sold them, weren't going out there looking for opportunities, but said, oh, well, I've got these cards, someone else will appreciate them more. We throw them on up on eBay and let them sell for the market price. Even that, in my eyes, there's definitely an ethical decision to make there, but it wouldn't be as faux pas as someone who's out there searching for the opportunities.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think like I would also like if that was a card they know they want to get rid of and this was like their time to do it, maybe just list it for auction. Like maybe like that's
Mm,
a way where it's like it's gonna go for what someone really wants to pay for it right now. And you're not just trying to like price fix it. Like, all right, $60 and I'm never gonna come down because I need my 20x. But if you're just like, hey, this was sitting on it and it means nothing to me, let me just throw it up and someone else will grab it that wants it. Like that's just the market and that's fair. But I think it gets bad when you're just trying to hit a certain return or trying to price fix it or trying to do, again, buy a bunch of them and do that. But if you just want to sell something and get a fair market value, that's life. That's just normal, economics, and that's okay. But I just think, yeah, as long as you're not doing it in you don't have Google alerts on for anyone in the sports industry that passes away, and that's like your whole thing. Like as long as you're not doing that, like I don't think, yeah, I think it's everyone can do what they want, right? And it's just like the market price will also dictate. And I think right now, if again his cards are selling for a little more, part of it I could be like, all right, that sucks, but I want to be half full and say it's because he has more fans now than he ever has before, and that's okay. Um,
mhm.
yeah, and that's okay. And maybe this is a small example because it's not exploding into like thousands of dollars and it's not like some huge thing. So maybe this is like a smaller scale example where I'm okay with it. Whereas if I saw something that was going maybe even more crazy, I might even get a little more sensitive to it. But it seems right now where it's not like too much foul play is happening. It's just some people,
Mm.
like you said, are unloading some stuff that didn't mean anything to them. It is what it is.
I think I'm learning that, even though you think of ethics as having a discrete right and wrong, and being black and white, there could definitely be a spectrum because, even what you just said there, if it's such low values, maybe it doesn't upset you as much. But if it was somebody taking advantage and making thousands of dollars, that, maybe that would make us feel a
Yeah,
different
or
kind of way.
ruining it for the rest of us that want to collect them,
But
right? That's the other thing.
absolutely, and I get that. On the flip side, my perspective earlier was that if it's just a matter of a few dollars, then somebody shouldn't necessarily feel motivated to do that, to make 10, 15, $20 on a card. So it's kind of like, I'm saying they shouldn't do it if it's just a few bucks, and you're saying, it would make us feel a certain kind of way if they did it for a lot of money. So at the end of the day, I'm sure there's a million perspectives on this, a lot of nuance that I'm sure we haven't even covered, but thanks for walking through that with me because, this is It's tough. It's tough to have these conversations. It's tough to process when your sport, your community goes through a tragedy. And it's also tough to really tie this into the topic of this show, which is trading cards. So thanks for kind of going through that with me. Now, I already alluded to the fact that you do have at least one Grayson Murray card, and that's the card of the week. Could you tell me a little bit about that card, any other Grayson Murray cards that you might have, and how does this whole tragedy affect the meaning for you about those cards?
Yeah, great question. So I looked through my collection and I only have a couple of his cards, and it's a couple copies of that one you alluded to. So it's a 2021 SP Authentic of 799 on card auto. So that's, to my knowledge, one of his only like two or three on card autos. He has that, and he has a Sign of the Times, which is like a horizontal card, very cool. And there's a version of that that's of 50 where it's inscribed, and he does call out that the win he had, like what was it, like 5 years ago or whatever it was, maybe longer. So that card's great. So he has that, and yeah, that card means a lot more to me now than ever before. When I was opening those packs, he wasn't on my radar at all. I read the back and saw he had only one win, and I was like, okay, like he's just one of those. In my mind, he was like a filler in the set of like, all right, someone that's won. He could pop off, he could not. He's been around a while, probably not. But then when he won this year, that's what actually put him on the radar because I listened to the interview, I listened to all that. So that's what I actually became a fan this year. So I think that's why I was actually like a little bit, heartbroken, was because I started to finally follow him and watch him. And he like made the cut at the Masters, super cool, made the cut at the PGA. So he was like doing great. So I think that's why I was also just so surprised, because it was like I was like rooting for the underdog. And even when he won and I listened to that interview earlier in the year, that's when right away that card had more value to me in my collection. So I didn't run off and go buy more or start to like double down, but it was like cool. Like now that card has a little bit of a story for me and a little bit more than just like a filler card in the set. So just by default, yes, it definitely it meant more to me right there. So that was kind of his cards from that set, was just like that Sign of the Times and the SP Authentic sort of rookie auto base. He doesn't have any base cards in that set or any inserts or anything like that. So those are the only three. And then he's also in the artifacts set. So those are the only two sets he's in. And in artifacts, he has an autofax, which is cool, but it's like a sticker auto. And then he has a ball marker card, which is like those thick ball markers. He has a legendary course relic card, which has the sand from the golf course in it. And then he has a rookie auto that has three versions. One is of 149, one is 25, and one is actually a one of one black, which is really cool. But that's his whole card. He has about 10 total.
Wow. And one thing I'll point out, which you and I talked about offline, it doesn't look like he has any base rookie cards. So for the most part, all of the Grayson Murray cards on the market are going to be autographs. Upper Deck, they'll do is they'll have a base checklist and they try not to make it too big. So there might only be like 100 cards, 50 veterans and 50 rookies, or maybe 150. But once you get to and by the way, and that includes uh, the legends of the game like Jack Nicklaus and Byron Nelson and Arnold Palmer and those sorts of people who get added into these sets too. So once you factor all of that in, when they build a checklist, they only have a certain amount of space in the base checklist to fit the top 100, 150 golfers in the world. And so even if Grayson Murray was in the top echelon of golfers, he might not have squeezed into the base checklist. And to me, I think that to me that makes these cards extra special. They all have been personally touched by this man, even the sticker autographs. Um, the one card that really stands out to me out of all the ones you mentioned, Artifacts is my favorite set. And so the vertical rookie autograph that you mentioned, the interesting thing about that, so that out of 149, out of 120, or sorry, out of 25, and out one of one, the gold variation that's out of 25, to me that's a special parallel from Artifacts that I really love. Some of my favorite
Yeah.
golfers like Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor, I specifically sought out that particular card. What's interesting about Grayson Murray's version is that that set is supposed to be a dual relic rookie autograph, so it's supposed to be an RPA, a rookie patch autograph, and that is the case for most of the guys like Bryson DeChambeau, Colin Morikawa, my guy Matthew Wolf. All of them have this particular version as an RPA. But then once you get into those guys who weren't in the checklist, in the base checklist, I mean, those guys got the same card except they don't put memorabilia onto it. So I found that kind of interesting and unique.
You're 100% right. And I don't think I'd really actively thought about that till just now, but you're 100% right.
You know, another guy like maybe a Harold Varner might be in that
Yep.
category where he
No,
wasn't
he
on the
has
base.
no patch. Yep.
Yeah, so interesting card. Now I think actually you might have actually skipped over one because you mentioned you had a couple, two or three on card autographs. You mentioned the sign of the times that's inscribed out of 50, and then the base rookie auto. There's also from 2021 SP Authentic. There's his horizontal rookie patch autograph, and that's serial numbered out of 100, and that's an on card auto as well.
You're right. That's the RPA.
And that would probably be his only RPA. You know, the kind of card that was selling for, gosh, $5 to $10. Who knows what they're going to sell for now? I'm not going to, again, out of respect for him, I don't want to make this too much about cards, so I'm not going to look it up and start talking more data. But for those who are interested in collecting a piece of Grayson Murray history as part of your collection and you want to respect and honor his legacy, you know, those are some of the cards you might want to look out for. Um, before we go, any kind of final thoughts on any of this, on Grayson, on anything I shared, on the topic of mental health, anything else?
Yeah, I think I'll end it on this. You sort of asked at the top of the conversation as to what people can do to help themselves that are dealing with this. And I think I called out a couple things, but the one thing that I forgot that's actually helped me the most of anything else is I've learned for myself that it's impossible to be like depressed, anxious, all of those negative things, and be grateful at the same time. Like those two things tend to cancel each other out. So for me, anytime I get as really bad, I literally either write it down or open up a notes that I already have in my phone that is just a list of things that I'm like actually grateful for and that I feel actually lucky to have. And as soon as I start doing that, it's like an instant pill that just washes away the rest. Like you can't be both. So anyone like short-term solution, it's not a long-term one, but just in the moment, kind of like, like a band that sort of snaps, like if you have like addictions or anything, I think that's my version of that is just list the things you're grateful for, talk them out loud, write them down, share them with your spouse, whatever it is. But that even if it's a 5-10 minute fix, like that's enough to at least steer your brain into a different direction.
Mm, yeah, amazing.
So
Yeah, you and I are in nice positions overall in life when you consider everything that goes on in the world. But
yeah,
there's still a lot of stresses and a lot of things that are outside of our control that can cause us to kind of fall into some slumps mentally. And one of the strategies I've heard about is called gratitude journaling, and it sounds like you do exactly that, just in the digital age. You keep it in a note on your phone. So, for those of you who could be going through
nice.
some struggles, make that note on your phone. Write down everything you're grateful for. Those who are old school, look up gratitude journaling on Google and, find a format that works for you. I think we can end it
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for, asking these questions and giving a platform for people to talk about it and think about it. Appreciate it.
You bet, man. I do think I had some questions for the mailbag, and there were some other topics I was planning on covering this week, but I'm just really going to let this episode stay dedicated to Grayson, to this topic of awareness surrounding mental health and managing life with mental illness. And some of my key takeaways from that conversation with James is do what makes you present. Identify the things that keep you in the moment and fill your time up. I guess he said with things you don't hate. I guess I would frame that as things that make you feel fulfilled. Talking to experts, seeking resources, medication, and surrounding yourself with people who can relate to you and who have gone through those struggles so that you don't feel alone. When it comes to the trading card hobby, where are the lines? When it comes to buying and selling cards, when an athlete passes, is there an ethical dilemma? Paul Hickey, if you're listening to this, I want to hear your thoughts on this as my connection to that buying and selling world. And to everybody out there, just shoot me a DM with your thoughts. My Instagram is at the Golf Card Collector. You'll find me very active in our Facebook group, Golf Cards and Memorabilia. Shoot me a note, a message, comment on one of the posts. If you want to share your feelings about Grayson Murray and his story, or just the topic of mental health in general, my door's always open, and my thoughts, my prayers go out to the Murray family. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you next week.